what really grinds my gears? Donald Trump is still here. The rapture supposedly happened, and damn, I wanted all the Christo-fascists to leave the earth so we would live in peace. Did they? Fuck no. Why? Because the Bible mentions nothing about the rapture. Or even calls it that. Christian dumbasses. Read and learn, you dumb fucks. Wendy the Druid. The linguistic clusterfuck that started it all. Let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The word rapture doesn't appear anywhere in the fucking Bible. Not once. This whole theological shit show is built on a house of cards so flimsy, a first-year seminary student with half a brain could blow it down. The term comes from the Latin rapturus, Jerome's Vulgate translation of the Greek harpazo, in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. But here's where shit gets interesting. Harpazo means to seize, to snatch, or to carry off. And it's used 14 times in the New Testament, mostly describing violent fucking seizures or robberies. Matthew 11:12, John 10:12. The same word describes wolves snatching sheep and the violent taking of the kingdom of heaven. Does that sound like your gentle Jesus floating believers up to cloud 9? Hell no. The Hebrew equivalent would be lakach, or hartap, ph, both meaning to take or to snatch away. When you examine the Tanakh's usage of these terms, they're consistently about judgment, not escape. In Genesis 5:24, when Enoch is taken, laka, the JPS Hebrew English Tanakh doesn't suggest he avoided anything, he simply was no more. The Midrash Rabbah on Genesis actually interprets this as Enoch being transformed into Metatron, not whisked away from tribulation like some cosmic fucking Uber ride. 2. Paul's actual message, endurance, not escape. Here's where modern Christianity's reading comprehension goes to absolute shit. Paul never, and I mean never, preached a pre-tribulation rapture. Let's examine what this bastard actually wrote in Greek, not what your megachurch pastor pulled out of his ass last Sunday. In 2 Thessalonians 2:1-3, Paul explicitly states regarding the parousia, the coming or presence of Christ. Μη της ουμάς εξαπατήσει κατά μηδένα τρόπον, ότι αν μη έλθει η αποστασία πρώτον. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the apostasy comes first. The Greek is crystal fucking clear. The apostasia, must happen first, not after believers are conveniently airlifted out of harm's way. Furthermore, in 1 Thessalonians 3:3-4, Paul tells believers they are destined for afflictions. Estuto kimetha, we are appointed unto this. The verb kaimetha, is in the present middle a passive indicative, meaning this is their ongoing fucking reality, not something they'll skip out on. The Talmudic tradition in Sanhedrin 97a, 99b discusses the Messianic era extensively, and nowhere does it suggest the righteous will avoid the birth pangs of the Messiah, Hebli Mashiach, Shevle Mashiach. In fact, Rabbi Eliezer explicitly states that the generation witnessing the Messiah's arrival will endure unprecedented suffering. The Mishnah in Sotah 9:15 describes the pre-Messianic period as one where the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog, total moral fucking collapse that everyone experiences together. 3. The Gnostic texts, that shit all over, escapist theology, the Nag Hammadi texts, particularly the Apocalypse of Peter and the first Apocalypse of James, present fascinating parallels that completely fuck up the rapture narrative. These texts, while not canonical, reflect early Christian thought that emphasized transformation through suffering, not escape from it. The Coptic term eshesh, sharp, meaning to become or to happen, is consistently used to describe believers' transformation through tribulation, not their removal from it. The Gospel of Thomas, saying 68, has Jesus stating, "Blessed are you when you are hated and persecuted. Not blessed are you when you're yanked out before shit gets real." The Greek fragments from Oxyrhynchus confirm this reading. Early Christians understood suffering as integral to spiritual transformation, not something to be avoided through divine extraction. 4. The mathematical bullshit of date setting every asshole who's predicted the rapture, from William Miller's great disappointment in 1844 to Harold Camping's embarrassing 2011 failure, has violated Christ's explicit warning in Matthew 24:36. «Περιδέ της ημέρας εκείνης και ώρα σου δισούδεν». But concerning that day and hour, no one knows. The Greek oudis, oudeis, is an absolute negation. Not, maybe someone could figure it out with the right calculations. Nobody knows. Shit. The Hebrew concept of etketies, etkets, time of the end, in Daniel is deliberately obscure. Daniel 12:9 states the words are, stumim vahatumim ad etketies, closed up and sealed until the time of the end. The call passive participles here indicate a divine sealing that human intelligence cannot fucking penetrate. 5. Revelation's witness, endurance, not extraction. The book of Revelation, that fever dream of apocalyptic imagery that fundamentalists love to cherry-pick, actually destroys the pre-trib rapture narrative. In Revelation 7:14, those in white robes are described as oi erchomeni ektis thlipsios tis megales, the ones coming out of the Great Tribulation. The present participle erchomeni, erchomenoi, with the preposition ek, indicates they came through it, not that they avoided it entirely. The two witnesses in Revelation 11 aren't raptured before their testimony. They're fucking killed first, 11:7, then resurrected. This pattern of death then resurrection, not escape then return, permeates the entire text. The Greek martyria, testimony or witness, is etymologically linked to martyrdom for a fucking reason. 6. The halakhic impossibility of selective salvation. Jewish law and tradition make the rapture theologically impossible. The halakha's principle of KHL Wishral, or Bimzait Biye Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, all of Israel are guarantors for one another, found in Shevot 39a, establishes collective responsibility. You can't have some people floating off to heaven while others suffer. That violates the fundamental nature of covenant community. The concept of tziviyah, tzibur, community in Jewish thought requires shared fate. The Kabbalah's notion of tikvin, volam, tikkun olam, repairing the world, demands presence during crisis, not absence. The Zohar explicitly states that in the time of the Messiah's revelation, all souls must be present for the final rectification. No one gets a fucking hall pass. 7. The apocryphal evidence against escapism. The Book of 2 Esdras, 4th Ezra, chapter 13, describes the Messiah's coming with imagery that fundamentalists would recognize, but with a crucial difference. The righteous don't escape, but rather stand firm. The Latin text reads, Et liberabit eos qui relicti sunt populi mei, and he will deliver those of my people who remain. The verb relicti, remaining, toi left behind, is exactly opposite to rapture theology's premise. The Apocalypse of Baruch, Su Baruch, 29-30, describes the Messianic age arriving after believers endure the last black waters, the worst tribulation. The Syriac manuscript tradition is consistent. Mai WKM, Hri, Maya Ukame Achre. The faithful witness these dark waters, they don't skip them. 8. How Christians fucked up the timeline. The dispensationalist bullshit that gave birth to the rapture doctrine comes from John Nelson Darby in the 1830s. That's right, this shit is younger than the fucking bicycle. Darby took Paul's metaphor of meeting Christ in the air, Isaera, and invented an entire theological system around it. But the Greek phrase parallels the Hellenistic custom of citizens meeting a dignitary outside the city to escort them in, not abandoning the city entirely. The phrase apandisin to Kyriou, apantisin to Kyriou, meeting of the Lord, in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, uses a technical term for civic receptions. When Cicero describes meeting Julius Caesar, he uses the Latin equivalent, accursus. Citizens went out to meet the arriving dignitary and immediately returned with them. They didn't fuck off to another dimension. 9. The Seven Mountains Mandate connection. Here's where this theological horseshit gets politically dangerous. The rapture doctrine feeds directly into Christian dominionism's Seven Mountain Mandate, the belief that Christians must control 7 spheres of influence before Christ returns. But there's a sick irony here. If you believe you're getting raptured out, why the fuck would you need to control anything? The answer reveals the true agenda. It's about power, not prophecy. The same assholes preaching imminent rapture are simultaneously building political kingdoms, hoarding wealth, and establishing theocratic control systems. The cognitive dissonance is so severe it would be hilarious if it weren't so fucking dangerous. They use rapture fear to motivate political action, while promising escape from consequences. It's the ultimate theological manipulation. 10. The historical Jewish understanding of suffering. The Talmudic concept of Yisrim Shel Ahava, Yisurim Shel Ahava, afflictions of love, in Berakot 5a, presents suffering as divine pedagogy, not something to escape. Rabbi Akiva, who was literally flayed alive by the Romans, didn't get raptured. He died reciting the Shema. The Midrash on Deuteronomy presents Moses himself as not entering the Promised Land, dying just outside it. If Moses doesn't get a free pass, why the fuck would you? The Jewish mystical tradition in the Sefer Yetzirah speaks of britot, covenants, that require presence through trials. The concept of Gilgul, reincarnation transformation, in Kabbalistic thought, suggests souls must complete their rectification through earthly experience, not by avoiding it. 11. Paul's theology of suffering. Let's return to Paul, that complicated bastard whose words get twisted more than a fucking pretzel. In Romans 8:17 he writes, Eper symbaskomen ina ke syndoxastomen. If indeed we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. The conjunction hina, expresses purpose. Suffering is the mechanism of glorification, not an optional inconvenience. In Philippians 3:10, Paul desires «Tu γνώνε αυτόν και την δύναμη της Αναστάσεως αυτού και την κοινωνία των παθημάτων αυτού». To know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings. The word koinonian, means intimate participation. You can't have fellowship with Christ's sufferings if you're floating above them on a fucking cloud. 12. The destruction of escapist hermeneutics. The hermeneutical principle of peshat, plain meaning, in Jewish exegesis would never allow the interpretative gymnastics required for rapture theology. When Jesus speaks of one taken, one left, in Matthew 24:40-41, the Greek verb paralambanite, in context refers to judgment, not rescue. In the preceding verse, those taken in Noah's flood were destroyed, not saved. How the fuck did Christians reverse this? The answer lies in shit translation and worse theology. The King James Version's inconsistent rendering of Greek terms created ambiguities that didn't exist in the original. The Byzantine text tradition that the KJV relies on has variant readings that modern critical editions have corrected, but fundamentalists cling to their mistranslations like life preservers on the Titanic. 13. The apocalyptic reality. Check every apocalyptic text in the Second Temple period, from 1 Enoch to the Testament of Moses, presents tribulation as purgative, not punitive for the elect. The righteous endure and are refined. They don't get a get-out-of-jail-free card. The Qumran community's war scroll describes the sons of light fighting through the final battle, not watching from the bleachers. The Greek term thlipsis, tribulation, appears 45 times in the New Testament, and in every fucking instance where it relates to believers, it's something they experience, not avoid. Jesus explicitly states in John 16:33, «En to kosmo thlipsin έχετε», in the world you have tribulation. Present tense, indicative mood. It's a statement of current and ongoing reality. 14. The final theological nail in the coffin. The ultimate destruction of rapture theology comes from understanding the Hebrew concept of berit, covenant. Covenants in the ancient Near East were blood bonds requiring presence through trials. The dam berit, blood of the covenant, that Jesus references at the Last Supper doesn't exempt followers from suffering. It sanctifies their suffering. The Mishnah in Avot 3:5 states, Whoever accepts upon himself the yoke of Torah, the yoke of government, and the yoke of worldly concerns are removed from him. But this isn't about physical removal. It's about spiritual transcendence, while remaining physically present. The Hebrew ol, yoke, implies burden-bearing, not burden avoidance. Conclusion. The bitter fucking truth. The rapture is theological masturbation. It feels good to those doing it, but produces nothing of value. It's a 9th century invention that contradicts 2 millennia of Jewish and early Christian understanding. Paul preached endurance through tribulation because that's what transformation requires. The Greek texts are clear, the Hebrew precedents are unanimous, and the apocryphal witnesses are consistent. Nobody gets to skip the hard part. Modern Christianity's obsession with escaping tribulation reveals a faith so weak it can't face its own theology. The same fuckers stockpiling guns for the end times are simultaneously preaching they won't be here for it. The same assholes building bunkers are teaching imminent rapture. The cognitive dissonance isn't a bug. It's a feature designed to keep people fearful, controllable, and disconnected from the actual message of endurance, transformation, and communal responsibility that permeates authentic biblical tradition. The Seven Mountains Mandate pushes for Christian dominion over education, religion, family, business, government, arts, and media. But if believers truly expected imminent rapture, why would they give a shit about controlling these spheres? Because deep down, even they know the rapture is bullshit. It's about power, control, and creating a theological justification for Christian nationalism that would make the Pharisees, Jesus condemned, look like fucking progressives. The truth is, if you're waiting for the rapture, you'll die waiting. If you're preaching the rapture, you're preaching heresy that contradicts the very sources you claim to follow. And if you're believing in the rapture, you've been sold a theological timeshare in a building that doesn't exist. The texts, Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, Coptic, Syriac, and Latin, all point to the same conclusion. You're going to be here for whatever comes, so you better fucking prepare for endurance, not escape. References: JPS, Hebrew, English Tanakh, Jewish Publication Society, Steinsaltz, Adin. The Talmud, the Steinsaltz edition, New York, Random House, 1989. Charles, R.H.E.A. Eddy. The Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha of the Old Testament, 2 vols, Oxford, Clarendon Press, 1913. Robinson, James M. Edin. The Nag Hammadi Library in English, 4th eddy, Leiden, Brill, 1996. Marshall, Alfred. The Interlinear Greek-English New Testament, 4th ed. in Grand Rapids, Zondervan, 2012. Kelly, J.N.D. Early Christian Doctrines, 5th ed. London, A&C Black, 1977.